All right, everybody, welcome back to the Move podcast. Talking about the Dauphiné Libre and the Tour of Switzerland, the last two big stage races / prep races before the Tour de France. Both races that we know very well. We always played a mix of, normally did the Dauphiné, but we were no strangers to the Tour of Switzerland. Joined down there in Austin, Texas by JB Hager.
Hello.
Over there in Madrid. Just keeps coming with the photo montage in the back. Johan Brunel. And Mr. Hincapie, the diva, down in the wine cellar.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a minute. I miss you guys.
It has been.
It's probably better that we miss each other because we got a long month coming up here. And the tour is right around the corner.
Yep.
Kind of crazy. Today's show brought to you by Element. We talk about it all the time. And now that it is finally summertime out here, it's time to rip up the trails, rip up the road, and sweat my ass off. That's pretty much what I do. This is our go-to hydration solution. 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium, no sugar, no gluten, no artificial crap, no BS, 100% the real deal. Our listeners can get a free Element sample pack with any order when you order at drinklmnt.com/themove. That's drinklmnt.com/themove. This offer is available for new and returning customers, and it's exclusively available to partners like The Move. You won't find this offer out there publicly. Another one for today, HVMN, another one we've been jamming on, talking about. If you haven't been following the ketone phenomena, then you hadn't been paying attention. This thing is everywhere, especially in the professional peloton. Over 60% of the teams in the pro peloton are using HVMN, ketone IQ, ketones, esters. Tons of really cool benefits. Also highly used with our special forces here in the United States. You think about that. You got the peloton, highly performing, special forces, highly performing. They know what they're doing. They just got a $6 million contract from U.S. Special Ops Command. The next 50 people to visit hvmn.com and use the promo code THEMOVE20. We'll save 20%. Again, that's hvmn.com. And the promo code is THEMOVE20. All right, let's get into the Dauphiné Libre. By the way, because I touched on this a second ago, we did do both races over our years. I always preferred the Dauphiné. I don't know. It's a lot of times you had some climbs that you might see in the Tour. It was just preferable.
Yeah, I feel like Lance. I feel like you did the Dauphiné more, but in those years that you did Switzerland, I remember I did that with you. Why was that? Why did we decide?
He only did it once.
Only once. Was it one time?
Did it earlier in my career, but during that run of 7, just once.
And the reason was because there was an uphill time trial in the Tour de France. We wanted to do, and there was an uphill time trial in the Tour of Switzerland. We wanted to, test the effort and also the equipment.
I still have nightmares, by the way, of that because we finished in, I think we finished in Zurich, and we helicoptered over St. Moritz, Lance and I and Christian, and we met with our trainer at the time, Michele, and we all got super fat during the during Switzerland. I think we put on like 4 pounds each. I did, so did Christian. I don't know about Lance, but like it was a nightmare because we basically couldn't eat for the next 10 days while we were in Switzerland. So I remember that trip very well.
Did you guys ever strategically try to decide which one to do by knowing what competition is going to be there? Does that ever come into play?
Or which competition is not going to be there? Right. I mean, it's not any secret that a lot of the big guys try to avoid each other. Mm-hmm. And there's even been articles leading up to the Tour here, how Roglic and Pogacar have seemingly tried to not go head to head. Now, whether or not that's, a mutual decision or just random circumstance, who knows? But yeah, there's also ways to just not let your biggest rivals see even just see how you look, see how the team looks,
especially,
see how you're riding.
Especially back then, social media was not yet like it is today. Not even, it didn't even exist yet almost. And, there was no publication of data. There was no Strava. So basically you had to see the guys in person. And now off the top of my head, Lance, I don't think that during those 7 years, not once have you raced against Jan Ullrich before the Tour de France in either Dauphiné or Tour de Switzerland. You always did Dauphiné. He always did Switzerland. And then the year he did Switzerland, I don't know what he did. He probably did the Giro or something, or I don't remember. But yeah. And by the way, it's not a little correction. It's not called the Dauphiné Libéré anymore.
Oh wow!
The Dauphiné Libéré is the name of a newspaper, and it's called the Critérium du Dauphiné, the region. The Dauphiné Libéré is not sponsoring it anymore.
Johan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Because ASO bought it.
Yeah, exactly.
10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Pogacar and Roglic have not even raced once this year together, have they? I think I read that somewhere.
No, they haven't.
They've been totally, which I think will make the Tour de France, a bit more exciting. But it's also sad to see some of the best two guys in the world not go head to head in the other races, which are obviously very important as well.
Yeah, I agree. But it's nice for the build-up of the rivalry.
Yeah.
Right now, normally logic would say that Pogacar is a little bit stronger than Roglic. Roglic is not getting any younger. He got injured. Pogacar had a perfect season until now. So at least we can wait to find out until the first big test in the Tour de France.
Yeah. When you guys have the goal of the Tour de France and you're doing, whether it's the Dauphiné or Tour de Suisse, do you ever go in there and say, I'm not showing all my cards? Or are you always suiting up to win?
Well, it's this, and I wanted to talk about this. I always, if you could win and not show all your cards and still keep some in reserve, which, you're 2 weeks out from the Tour. A race like that, if you're that good, you can do that. I kind of wonder, and of course we're going to get into how strong Vingegaard looked. If I'm Roglic, what a perfect opportunity to let your main lieutenant win the race. Mm-hmm. Turns out he actually looked stronger. But just as a sort of a political thing within the team, like, hey, I'm going to lay back. I'm cool to get second in the Dauphiné. Vingegaard, you win. It just buys you some.
Exactly.
And I was surprised that he didn't. And I was even more surprised with. And again, we're not in the race. We're not in his head, so we don't know. But Vingegaard looked like he was pedaling with one leg, and Roglic almost looked like he was having to tell him to slow down.
He did. He did tell him to slow down. And I agree. The only thing is that Vingegaard lost 45 seconds in the time trial to Roglic. And I don't know. I have the feeling like these things are, they're not happening anymore. It's like they don't feel the thing. Okay, like they're just focused on their watts. This is what I have to do. This is what I can do. And, I have the feeling those things don't happen anymore. It's a shame, right? Because, if they come together to the finish, then they decide who wins the stage. But it would have been a great opportunity for Vingegaard to win the Dauphiné. He could have won. He had the legs to win for sure.
Yep. Yeah.
But let's go. Let's be real here. Vingegaard got second place in the Tour de France last year. I think there is still a bit of a battle for who exactly is the leader of that team. So if I'm Roglic, I'm not letting him ride away from me if I have the option to, because I need to establish my leadership before the Tour de France. One of those guys is going to have to give at some point during the Tour. But obviously they're both riding amazingly well right now.
Well, the way it looked on TV when I was watching, if I'm Jumbo Visma, I got two captains. He looked too good.
They have to. They have to. And it's also. It's the only way to beat Pogacar. They have multiple captains to play with. Same with Ineos. They have guys that are up there now. Geraint Thomas is back on good shape, but none of them individually is good enough to beat Pogacar. So they would have to use two guys in the case of Jumbo Visma and three guys in the case of Ineos.
Mm.
So I think wanting to be the leader of a team, it doesn't really make any sense to me. They just have to go in, and it's either Jumbo Visma is the goal and Ineos is the goal as a team, not a battle within the team of who's the leader, because ultimately what matters is be the leader of the race in yellow, right? And that can never go at the expense of an internal battle of who wants to be the leader of the team. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
What does that look like, Johan? Paint a picture for us. If Jumbo has these two captains and they need to use two weapons against Pogacar, how do they do that? Give us a scenario.
First of all, it's a progress. It's a process. You have to try to wear out the team of the leader, which is not going to be easy because UAE got stronger with their hiring in the off season. They got Marc Soler, they got George Bennett, they got other guys. So when they really see it's the time, then play, for example, a guy like in the case of Ineos. Let's take Ineos because I think they have a better scenario to play with tactics. They have Geraint Thomas, they have Adam Yates, and they have Dani Martinez. Those three guys, none of them can beat Pogacar, but they can play. Like if a guy like Adam Yates goes in a big break, which is difficult to control, UAE is already a little bit worn out. And then on top of that, they kind of have to hope that there's going to be a situation that it's the whole peloton against Pogacar, the whole peloton against UAE. And that sometimes happens. If you're such a big favorite, then you get to a point where teams actually are starting to ride to make you lose instead of wanting to win themselves, So all these factors combined could be at the advantage, but then of course, that's the plan. Then at the moment the opportunity presents itself, there is the potential to go in a long break. Then the guy who needs to move needs to have the legs too, of course. But that's, in my opinion, the only way they can beat him.
Not only that, but they have to take advantage of this first week of the Tour de France, being in Denmark, riding over cobblestones. I mean, Lance and I remember when you saw the old Jumbo Visma Rabobank at the front and you knew that there was some kind of crosswinds. These guys were specialists, of course, different players now, but it's still one of their main strengths, especially with the guys they have on the team. So they're going to have to look for opportunities early on, which I think is just going to be even add to the excitement of the Tour de France. This is the only way poking holes in the UAE, sort of defense.
Yeah, but anyway, we should talk a little bit about the Tour of Switzerland and the Dauphiné.
We're getting excited.
We're getting excited.
We got what? Less than 2 weeks.
10 days. 10 days. To start of the tour.
But you're right. There were other standout performances.
You're right. Johan, why? I have a quick question about the Dauphiné and the Switzerland. Is it just me or breakaways actually making it now? Like there's so many miscommunicate, like they're making it to the line. We've never really seen so many breakaways in the Giro, the Dauphiné, Switzerland. These breakaways are making it. Why is that?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, obviously I think we're going to see that less in the Tour because the stakes are higher. But I agree. Breakaways have been making it, which is hopeful, of course, because it will animate the race. They will think that the Tour de France is still going to be the same thing. And also because, nowadays, I mean, I personally think that earlier on, and I think we're going to see more and more breakaways make it because the general level of the peloton keeps rising. Right. And whoever goes in a breakaway, they already have to be really strong to be in there.
Right.
So obviously, they have a lot more horsepower in the break, and it will be more difficult for the peloton to catch them.
Yeah, I mean that's what we've been saying, right? The second 100 guys, so the back half of the peloton is not the same as the back half of our peloton. I mean, it's the level for all of the riders, whether you get the yellow jersey or whether you get last place, they're all higher across the board. So these guys are ending up in these breaks. And have the power to keep going.
I think except real mountain stages, it's very difficult now to say, okay, this break we'll let it go. They're not that good anyway. They can all ride super fast. I mean, if you look at the speeds, for example, the time trial yesterday in the Tour of Switzerland. It was, you had to go above 54 kilometers per hour to win on over 20. You go 51.5 kilometers per hour and you're not even top 20. You're top 50, not even top, you're in between 15 and 20th. So, all these guys can go super, super fast now. And, as the higher the speed, the more difficult it is to, before, first of all, who went in the breakaway? The guys who had no chance of doing anything else. They went to the breakaway with the hope to show the jersey, and then maybe, hopefully, one time in 100 they could make it. And now it's these guys, the guys who won the breakaway are super strong.
There's no more panic cooking breakaways.
No, exactly. Right. Yeah, that's that they're. There are different types of panakuchen. There's stronger panakuchens.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other thing that stood out at the Dauphiné was just, we've seen it all year, is just how superior, or how amazing Jumbo Visma is. I mean, that team. With his Wout van Aert. Ooh.
Yeah, Wout van Aert winning.
What was the stat we saw? The amount of. But for the races, I forget the exact stat, but on all the races he started, the amount of times or percentages of times he's finished on the podium, it's absurd. I mean, it's above 70%.
70%. Yeah. I know.
Think about that.
Yeah. And then, in terms of Wout van Aert, so he won stage 1, and then he won another stage. But then, so weird to see a guy, a winner like him, making this stupid mistake of raising his arms too early, and David Gaudu passing him on the line. He felt really stupid. But otherwise, Jumbo Visma would almost have won all the stages except the time trial and those 2 breakaways. But otherwise, they would have won 5 stages, I guess.
That's a scary predicament for all the other teams. I don't know if he still may not have won though. Gaudu was coming very, very quickly.
It is
hard
possible
to tell. But yeah, I mean, possible, with him winning stages, then Vindigo winning the last stage, Roglic winning the overall. I mean, these guys, and they still have, they're, some of the guys got pulled out of Switzerland, but obviously with Sepp Kuss, they still have other teams, other guys riding well.
I think what we said, about Jumbo Visma, I think what we saw, which is, definitely very good for their morale, is that in the Dauphiné, at least, and especially at the end, Kruijswijk was very strong. Kruijswijk, but also, I made a little list of the I don't have it here now, but I think I know it off my head. If you look at the results over the past 3-4 years of the guys of Jumbo Visma, you have Kruijswijk, who was 3rd at the Tour de France already and 5th at the Tour. He was 4th in the Vuelta and he was 4th in the Giro. Then you have Vingegaard, who was 2nd in the Tour. Then you have Roglic, who wins 3 times the Vuelta, is 2nd in the Tour and 3rd in the Giro. I mean, it's not that surprising that they're dominating. There's nobody else who has those kind of results. Yeah. So people say, they're dominating, it's boring. But if you have that quality together, there's nobody who can go against that. And then the biggest rival was Ben O'Connor, the 4th of the Tour de France of last year. So I think it's quite kind of logical what we saw.
By the way, I love that. I mean, everybody thought that was really a flash in the pan, like they probably thought with Jai Hindley. But what a confirmation. Who knows? I mean, we'll see in July. But Johan, you mentioned the speeds of the climbs.
So, we saw, obviously, people could say, it was boring. Jumbo Visma was dominating, but they just keep going faster and faster. There was this one climb, I don't remember now the name, but the record of that climb was Fuglsang when he won the Dauphiné, I think in 2017. And together with Froome, they had the fastest time on that climb. And Vingegaard and Roglic, it was actually Roglic. It was the second last day. They went 1 minute 48 seconds faster. but not only that's okay. You can say, okay, that's huge. But the top 11 broke the record. Wow. The top 11 broke the record, the fastest time on that climb. So, nowadays, we're lucky to be able to measure these performances in times of, the time and the steepness and the VAM, the watts per kilo, and it just keeps going up and up.
Are they starting the faster tempo at the beginning of the climb as opposed to it used to build up slower?
Good question.
What I have heard from one of the team managers who was at the Giro, he said it's unbelievable nowadays how fast they get into the climbs. He said, my climbers, they are, they're happy to get to the bottom of the climb, but first they have to kind of breathe and recover for a kilometer. Like, okay, now we can start, because then these guys who set the tempo are getting dropped. I mean, on the last stage, there was a rider from Trek who was in the first group still, and he said, during 15 kilometers they were going 60 kilometers per hour, and he did not even have time to take a gel. And it was only Walt van Aert pulling. So they get to the climb and they're happy to get to the climb because they can finally ride their own tempo. Wow. They're getting faster into the climbs at the bottom of the climb, for sure.
Well, you mentioned that he didn't have time to need a gel, but I was going to say, I feel like they've dialed in their fueling strategies a lot more precise than when we were riding. Before, we'd have a couple of rice cakes and, whatever our soigneurs made. But I think now it's a real scientific approach to exactly how much energy they're spending per hour, how much they're able to absorb hydration wise and caloric wise. That is a much more scientific approach than when we were racing.
Well, we've talked about, the days of the feed zone may be a thing of the past. Taking a musette,
and you see, they all have this little thing on their stem, all of them, with the little, kilometer 10, this kilometer 30, a bottle and a gel. So that it's like a real nutrition plan. Mm-hmm. And that's also why you hardly see any guys bonking anymore. It's all under control.
When did the glucose monitoring devices and some of these new gizmos come into play?
Well, that's been the last year or two.
They're illegal though.
Yeah, they're worth noting. Those are not allowed, which is just so. But
they do it. They do it with training, correct?
Of course they will. I don't know the rule, but I doubt they're looking if they have a glucose monitor in training. But my opinion is, come on, that's technology, that's evolution. That is not an injection, although it is slightly submerged under the skin. But
I think the UCI's argument is the cost barrier. But I mean, if you look at the equipment of all these pro tour cyclists with the wheels and the TT bikes, I mean, that's a real cost. Sure.
We'll talk about Geraint Thomas's $50,000 time trial bike when we talk about the Tour of Switzerland. But so but you're right, JB. I mean, if they're using those things in training, that's how they are knowing exactly what they need at certain times, the amount of calories, the amount of consistency. I mean, you will learn a lot from that. I've played around with quite a few of them, and you learn.
And off the bike too, right?
Of course.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's jump over to the Tour of Switzerland. But before we do, today's show also brought to you by Athletic Greens. Now, another one we talk about all the time, and nothing has changed for me. I'm still really shitty when it comes to eating fruits and vegetables. I didn't listen to my mom much when I was a kid. Clearly, but this is a little hack for me, right? This is I'm super religious, whether I'm at home or on the road. I don't miss a day without my Athletic Greens. 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens starts my day off right. Also, just less than $3 a day. And it's really about taking control of your health. Like if you're not great at certain things and there is a product like Athletic Greens, why not? Let's make it easy. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/themove. One more time, that's athleticgreens.com/themove. Take ownership of your health. Last one. Today's show also brought to you by Helix Sleep. This is, and George, I want you to chime in here because I know, see, here's the thing. George is fancy. George has multiple houses, has friends with jizzies.
Oh my goodness.
So, he went and took he took the 2-minute quiz on Helix and got a customized mattress. But, we had to call Helix back because George has a lake house. So he's playing around with some things. I don't know if you want to get into it, George, but
yes, the process is super simple, super customizable. And yes, I just got another mattress for my lake house. Very excited about it. Thank you, Helix. We love you.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't believe us, been voted best mattress across a whole bunch of publications. Real simple. Head on over to helixsleep.com/themove, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they will match you with your customized mattress. Special offer, up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. That's helixsleep.com/themove.
Oh, man.
Wow. Anyway.
Switzerland. How about Switzerland?
Yeah, Tour Switzerland. I am from Switzerland. That means I have no opinion on anything. I am neutral. George, you're always neutral. You should have done the Tour of Switzerland every year. The nicest.
We got to go back. We got to point out Sagan stage win, back winning Pro Tour races. Most stages of the Tour de Switzerland ever won by any cyclist. A lot of people have been writing him off, and unfortunately got COVID right after the win. So,
well, that is one of the big takeaways from Tour Swiss. But to me, when I look at this and this outbreak, just when you think we're sort of getting over the hump as a society and for sports, then COVID comes back with a vengeance at the Tour of Switzerland. I'm not sure of the exact number of riders that had to go home, but it was a lot. And it just leads us to this place, a lot of guys. And it leads us to this, I don't know what is going to happen in July, whether they're going to have the strict protocols that if one person on the team, rider or staff, tests positive, everybody goes home. It just throws all of this into question again.
Well, I think, it's kind of strange that it didn't happen at any, there was 4 races going on this week, or, it didn't happen at any other race. Not in the Dauphiné, not in Tour of Belgium, not in Slovenia, not in the race in France that was just happening now, Route du Sud. And also, I personally think that there's been a lot of guys who went home because they had a positive, one of those positive fast tests, the antigen tests, but without symptoms. For example, one of them is Sagan, but many others. I don't think it's going to be any more like before. I don't know what the UCI is going to do with the protocol. Personally, I think that most of the teams acted themselves, but more out of precaution because we are so close to the Tour de France. Out of precaution, they just took their whole team out. Jumbo Visma, UAE, EF. No, EF didn't because they had gas positive, but there was 2 guys who were not, and they kept going. So I don't know how the UCI protocol is or if it has changed, but it's definitely a warning sign that we all have to be. We have to keep being very careful. It's not over.
Not only that, but think about Lance, when we'd finish the Dauphine Tour of Switzerland, we would maybe go to a training camp, but you'd still spend some time with your family. Now these guys are just completely cut off. They're in their bubble. They're not going to take any risks. They're not going to see any friends. They're not going to see any. It doesn't matter if it's their birthdays or whatever. That's kind of
good.
Sort of hard to wrap your around
that. It's the way it's supposed to be. It's what you're paid to do. You don't have friends. Okay. You have your friends in August and at Christmas and all this other time. There are no friends.
Lance, you're talking to George. You're talking to George.
No, I know.
I was a lot more social than you, Lance. I needed George that from my mind.
Having coffee with some guy with another fucking jersey. I say, but what is he doing? What?
I couldn't help but get a sense with the Tour of Switzerland. They were protecting their Tour de France. If you look back at COVID back in 2020, they were telling everybody you need to isolate for 3 weeks. Now it's more like 5 days. As Johan said, they weren't even showing symptoms, whereas in 2020, they were getting sick. it just seemed like it was just a precautionary thing to protect their Tour de France efforts. Stay healthy, just, get through your 5-6 day isolation, whatever it is. Let's get back to work.
Well, and there's new variants, so we don't know, especially if they're taking the rapid test. You're not seeing the exact variant. And I just read this morning, especially in Europe, there's a couple new variants that apparently are resistant to any previous infection, antibody, what's the word? Vaccines, which starts to be really scary. So we don't know if this is, listen, none of us are Dr. Sanjay Gupta, so we don't need to try to break this down too much. But if you start to go down the line and new variant that's potentially resistant, oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, back to Tour de Suisse. So Sagan, obviously nice to see. Yeah. I wouldn't say he's back, but it was really nice to see, he was suffering in the first few stages, and that stage, man, he was up there, and it was the good old Sagan killer to the finish. It was quite impressive how he won by beating Christoph in the sprint. And unfortunately then he was out, but I think we saw a few things. First of all, I'm quite sure that we would have seen a different outcome if Vlasov didn't go home. He was looking incredibly strong, as he has been the whole season already. We haven't been talking about Vlasov for the Tour de France, but that guy is definitely a podium candidate in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah. He was very strong in Romandy, won the last time trial. Uphill he was strong. And here, until he went home, he looked like he was a level above everybody else. And then also Fuglsang, Fuglsang is, right now he's in really good shape. In my opinion, he was overconfident and didn't. I saw certain things of him that he was reacting on anybody and showing too much how strong he felt. But ultimately, the other guys are strong too, and knowing that he doesn't have a great time trial, it was not a surprise to see him fall back on the last day. And
Geraint Thomas. So speaking of riders,
exactly,
and maybe I think you mentioned that people have almost written off Peter Sagan.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very similar. Here's a guy who
Same for Thomas. Yeah.
I think most people thought that his best days, especially in a Grand Tour, are well behind him.
Yeah.
Not only most people, but yeah, he's actually said in interviews where he's like, I don't even know if I want to ride for GC anymore. He said it himself. And I think now he's finding himself in his leadership role at Ineos, and he may not have a choice but to battle out for the GC.
Not even just climbing and time trialing. He was fast. He was really, really fast in some sprints.
Well,
he was leading out. He was trying to put Pidcock in a good position, and then Pidcock finally also had to go home with COVID. But I think obviously Geraint Thomas. Again, he's not at the level of Pogacar and Roglic, but he is damn strong. Over 3 weeks, has a lot of experience. He's a diesel. He's up there and he doesn't crack. So I think for his morale, obviously, this is a great win. I think it confirms a bit his leadership for Team Ineos for the Tour de France. And I think he deserves it also. He is the next Tour de France winner, so I think he deserves to be a leader.
Yep. Well, they're going to go in, I think, with a few options.
Yeah. What else do we have? We have
Evenepoel.
Remco Evenepoel. Yeah, up and down. He is seen as this, huge. He is a huge talent. Let's not, but for the moment, he is not showing enough consistency, in my opinion, especially in the big races. He said he had a complete off day on that one stage. Yesterday, he did an amazing performance in the time trial, super fast, over 54 kilometers per hour. So you cannot be that bad, if you're able to do 54 average. But you know,
and are they taking him to the Tour, Johan, or that's still undecided?
No, he's going to the Vuelta this year.
Okay.
He's doing the Vuelta. So I think he's in
one more year. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
At some point you got to show up to the big one.
Yeah. I think that's right. But I think personally that, you know, there's been, and the first responsible for that is himself, but there's too much pressure on him. It's too much. The expectations are super, super high. And then, you know, I've never seen such a big change in opinions. Like one week he's there, you know, and all of a sudden then he fails one day and he's done. Right. He's still young. He's still young. He already has, I think, 28 victories in professionals. You know, that's not nothing. So he's going to do the Vuelta. But personally, I think that the best race for him that will suit him the best is the Tour de France, because the climbs are longer and not as steep as the Giro and the Vuelta. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think with one Giro in the legs and now the Vuelta next year he should go to the Tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Geraint Thomas and was it also Danny Martinez busted out? I was just looking online here. And they tried to, you know, as like car makers do when they have
the camouflage,
a new car, new prototype. They put this really ends up looking really cool. This sort of camo paint or sticker scheme all over it, but looks like Pinarello has really leveled up their game on the TT front and the skin suit. I think something else is going on with the skin suit. I'm seeing.
I mean, the skin suit on Geraint Thomas looked incredibly good, good, like super tight, like it was like body paint, you know.
Yeah.
But
the bar. How about the bars? I mean, the whole thing. Yeah. Hats off, man. They're not missing much.
But this is not. I mean, sorry, JB.
That's okay.
This should not be a prototype because prototypes are not allowed. So I think what they've done is they camouflage this just to confuse the photographers, you know, because close up pictures of the frame design. They will obviously have to do an announcement before the Tour. It has to be commercially available to the public for a cyclist to use it. But this is Pinarello updating their range, you know. Until before the Tour of Switzerland, they didn't have their time trial bikes with disc brakes.
Right.
And so this is the first model. And I think there's a few changes, a few tweaks to the frame. But it looks really nice. It's definitely very fast.
Yeah, I think you already answered my question, Johan, because I remember, you know, you've discussed it in the past. They obviously want the public to be able to go buy the same bike the pros ride, right? There's a lot of upside to that. And I was wondering if that was true with the TT bikes. So I think you answered that. It has to be commercially available. But what is the price tag on a bike like that?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you know, once they're going to go off the chain of the assembly chain, it's going to be. But this particular bikes, you know, I think that's several $10,000s.
Right. Yeah, I think it's.
We're not going to be seeing those rolling around in our group rides. That's for sure.
They're not rolling out of the group ride at Melajani's, JB. Don't worry. and by the way, if some guy shows up with one, just tighten your shoes or something, or just get dropped and have a chill ride.
Hey, one last thing I think we wanted to touch on too, and it's something that I had never even heard discussed until, you know, you guys and Johan especially brought it to my attention this season, is that fear of relegation. You know, now I watch it, like when I was watching the last couple of weeks, I'm like, is EF going to get a result here? They need it so desperately. What's that picture look like going into the Tour for a few teams?
I wouldn't want to be in the position of some of those team managers, man. It must be super stressful, because if you don't make it in the top 18, you are sure already that the next 3 years you're not in the World Tour. So we don't know what kind of contracts they have with their sponsors. If being in the Division 1 is a requirement, some sponsors may take advantage of an out. Riders can take the advantage of an out, all of them. You know, like that's
so they all have. Are you saying in their contracts with the teams, there is a clause that if the team is relegated, they are out of they have an option.
They are allowed to leave. Yes.
I mean, and it's not dissimilar to, not that I follow a lot of soccer, but the Premier League over there, I think every year 2 or 3 teams are relegated and 2 or 3 teams are promoted. And I also saw recently that former UCI president Pat McQuaid was pretty critical of the structure. I'd have to think more about it and read more about it. But look, I think it's great. I mean, it's not great if you're one of the teams that gets relegated, but come on. I mean, nobody's buying their way in. This is the different model. And if you're not performing, and I kind of would just love to see Jonathan Butters in the second division, to be honest, but like really love it. But yeah, if you're not getting points and you're not, and they're not, like, we are watching these races all year long and you're like, have they even started the season?
Well, I mean, it's there's pros and cons, to the system. I mean, I think the first part is that it's a classification over the last 3 years. So, you can say, okay, 1 year we have bad luck, right? But I mean, the last 2 years, everybody had to deal with COVID. So that's a level playing field. And, it's 3 years. So, if you're not able to be in the top 18 over 3 years, then you probably don't deserve to be there, right?
Exactly.
But
the other con is that doesn't, for the first time that we've seen in cycling history, it doesn't matter how much money, you can't just come in with a $40 million sponsor right now and become pro tour next year. Well, so imagine that, like a new team trying to pitch a big company, say, give me this $40 million check, but oh, by the way, we can't be pro tour for the next 3 years. That's a very limited factor as well.
That I think is a shame, because it will prevent new money from coming in. Mm-hmm. Because the existing ones that make it in the first league, they will want to stay there for the 3 years, because obviously that's why they started it, right? So I mean, there's ups and downs for it. I thought personally that the Pro Tour before was a better system. You got in, and then you still had to be. You had a bunch of different criteria to fulfill, but I think it was a safer system for the teams, basically to know, okay, I can guarantee this to my sponsors. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what it brings, And
so I'm clear, Johan. So then the way to get promoted from the second division is obviously a point system there. So those 2 teams come to the Pro Tour.
Well, the thing is, if you're on the second level, they now call it pro teams. So it's World Tour and pro teams. If you're top 2 there, top 2 teams have the right and not the obligation, which is actually a better system, the right and not the obligation to participate in all the big races. So if you're first, like for example, Alpecin Phoenix was first last year, right? And they're going to the World Tour now, but they were first in the classification of the second level teams, and they are entitled to ride every single race in the World Tour, big tours, but they don't have the obligation. So, for example, if you see Dauphiné, Alpecin was not there. They didn't participate because they wanted to keep it, calm on their riders before the Tour de France. So I think, there's ups and downs. I mean, if you have a big enough budget to be in the second level and you can kind of project that you're going to be first or second at the end of the season, you're actually in a better position, because I think there's too many races anyway. I mean, this week, for example, there was 4 races going on, so there's too many races. It's a very charged calendar. And so that's obviously a possibility to be part of the big races. But then, of course, you have the unknown that you have to be first or second in the pro team league.
And speaking of smaller races, but perhaps the biggest rider in the world taking part in it was the Tour of Slovenia, where Pogacar and his teammate Rafael Majka basically rode away from everybody.
Whenever they wanted.
Guys like Mohoric, who won Milan San Remo.
And breaking news, for the first time in the history of professional cycling, they had to settle one of the stages, deciding who was going to win, with a classic game of rock, paper, scissors. I've never seen that.
No, that's a first. That's a first.
No. Well, but Tadej Pogacar goes in as a heavy favorite. That just if you're picking up little bits and pieces about his training or just performances,
yeah,
his to lose.
He still can't keep his hair in his helmet though. Could shave off a few seconds there.
I don't know what that is, but that's that. I mean, I don't know. It has to be on purpose. It's impossible that it's. I mean, it has to be on purpose.
Wait, what did I miss? He the hair comes out of the top.
He's always got. He's always got a poof sticking out.
Oh wow, that's a new one.
New look.
But I think I think that the Tour
before
of Slovenia,
the race, he's like pulling it out, getting it ready.
The Tour of Slovenia was, it was a game amongst 4 riders, basically, right? 4 Slovenians. But I think that, what I saw was really the way Pogacar was so comfortable. They didn't necessarily go super fast, but they were still at 6.1, 6.2 watts per kilo on certain climbs. And he was like incredibly comfortable, basically, having to make an effort to let Micah stay with him to make it together to the finish on the 2 difficult stages. So I think he rode it in 4th or 5th gear, and he still has a 6th gear for the Tour de France. So quite impressive, really impressive.
All right. Well, I mean, I think
we have our preview show coming up next week. It'll be fun to break down. Obviously, we're going to talk about the favorites, the podium contenders, but I think more importantly for this Tour de France is these first 9 days. What kind of team are they going to bring to back them up, to get them through? So I'm looking forward to hearing all you guys' opinions on that.
Yep. Yeah,
you can send questions if you want them us to do them on the preview show. That'd be great. The move at wedo.team. And you can also sign up for the season pass and get all that behind the scenes goodness.
Yep. Plus Johan and Spencer Martin's new show, Outcomes. Every day. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you in just over a week when we do our preview show for the tour. And then, of course, every day for 3 weeks, plus the Tour de Femme, the Tour de France Femme, for an additional week after the men's tour. So looking forward to that. We'll all be here in Aspen. JB's excited because it's about 105 down there in Austin.
It's brutal. Not a lick of rain either. It's rough.
That, man. No way. I'm out. Okay, cool. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in, like I said, just over a week.